Manchester United still haven't signed a third midfielder this summer, and if they start the new season that way, they could be facing a major tactical headache. With Casemiro gone and no like-for-like replacement in the squad, the midfield burden now falls on just 4 players. Kobbie Mainoo, Mason Mount,
Manchester United have a third!
And summer signings, Youri Tielemans.
No one marking Tielemans! Oh! What glorious technique!
And Andrey Santos.
Ball as well from Neto. There's Andrey Santos! It's 2-0 Chelsea!
On paper that gives them options, but it also leaves some very obvious problem areas. So if United's midfield roster stays exactly as it is, how capable is it really? And what does that mean for the team's entire game plan? When you picture how Carrick was as a player, you imagine a metronomic midfielder who plays safe but secure passes to lay the foundations for sustained possession. As a coach, his approach is more nuanced, but the principle remains largely the same. If you want control, it starts in midfield. Since Carrick's arrival, United's midfield rebuild has centred on the reintegration of Kobbie Mainoo ever since his puzzling alienation under the dictatorship of Amorim. Under Carrick, the switch to a back 4 has allowed United to field an extra attacking profile regardless of their shape across different phases of play. Significantly, this has freed up a spot for Bruno Fernandes in the central number 10 role, in turn allowing Mainoo to slot right into the double pivot alongside Casemiro. His partnership with Casemiro, one that Amorim had deemed unfeasible, has been impressive in of itself, let alone the fact that it has freed up Bruno to flourish higher up the field. Casemiro's time at United ended on a high, but nostalgia arguably makes that spell look better than it really was. In reality, his biggest impact came through rage-baiting set-piece goals rather than consistent defensive midfield control, forcing Carrick to reshape his entire system around the Brazilian's forward bursts and leaving Mainoo to carry much of the defensive burden for 2 players.
When you look at what Casemiro gives, it's having someone who's a tough tackler. And you really saw the best of Casemiro when the play was in front, when United would go and press. You saw the worst of him at different times when they get exposed at different times. They still got the results in transition.
While Mainoo's defending has dramatically improved since, Carrick wants him to start attacking the space behind opposing defences, fully harnessing his attacking qualities and helping him develop into a more complete midfielder. But as far as midfielders go, Mainoo is, first and foremost, a ball carrier. His most impactful moments come when he collects the ball deep and drives forward, evading pressure with close control rather than by splitting lines with line-breaking passes. It's a valuable trait and one Michael Carrick will certainly look to spam, but it can also turn United's build-up play into a one-trick pony. Because if Mainoo gets crowded out or dispossessed, there is often no alternative way to progress the ball but to hoof it upfield to Sesko and inshallah. In this regard, a pass-first midfielder like Carrick was as a player must be paired with Mainoo if United are to excel with him in the lineup. Santos offers a solution to this tactical dilemma, being a pass-first midfielder ranked in the 99th percentile among Premier League midfielders for progressive passes completed. In that sense, he complements rather than replicates Mainoo, as he ranks in just the 19th percentile for progressive carries, preferring to release the ball early. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, we'd be incredibly grateful if you subscribed. Your support helps us grow and continue creating the content you love. It's no secret that United have invested heavily in their midfield this summer, and the logic behind those moves ties to Carrick's ambition to assemble a trio inspired by PSG's dynamic lineup of Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz and João Neves. Aside from United's current midfield looking like the Alibaba version of PSG's, the real question is how to make it work. PSG usually operate in a 4-3-3, while Carrick's default is a 4-2-3-1. Still, a hybrid system or even a straight switch to a midfield 3 remains possible, particularly with Bruno already familiar with a deeper role under Amorim and in his current role in the Portugal squad. But ultimately, it comes down to the type of player who sits at the base of the midfield, because it is he who sets the tone for the entire structure. That's where Santos comes in. Santos screens the backline, drops between his centre-backs, protects the spaces that were vulnerable last season, and breaks up attacks with authority. In doing so, he brings balance back to the midfield and separates himself from his fellow Brazilian in a way that his new teammates will be thankful for. That balance has especially benefited Mason Mount, though of course he's never too far away from his next injury. Deployed in the double pivot alongside Santos in United's 3 friendlies so far, he has thrived this summer, freed to use his energy and sharp reading of a game as a pressing disruptor higher up the pitch. And once possession is regained, having 2 technically strong midfielders suits United perfectly, allowing Carrick's preferred style of controlled front-foot football to finally take shape. In truth, because Santos is willing to sit deeper and patrol in front of the defensive line, he is the only fully secure defensive midfielder option, and that makes him essential to United's midfield.
Midfielders, and especially defensive midfielders, you can't replace someone who reads the game. You see with someone like a Rodri who does it at the highest level. I'd much rather have someone positionally who's aware. That is worth its weight in gold more than someone who just runs like a chicken with its head cut off for 90 minutes.
Across every other pairing without him, there's a clear weakness. Tielemans' dubious running power and overall mobility make a partnership with Mainoo, in particular, a genuine concern against the Premier League's high-tempo sides. The reality is that Mainoo and Tielemans will naturally want the same roaming role as Mount, and it's starting to feel as though they will be competing for the same role or for Bruno's when the talisman is rested. With Casemiro departing, the obvious solution for United would have been to seek a direct replacement. At his best, Casemiro's game is defined by his front-footed defensive intensity, stepping out to snuff out danger and break up attacks before they gather momentum. Crucially, his defensive steel is matched by a calmness on the ball and an ability to spray passes so perfectly weighted they could find God himself. Tielemans may not be a like-for-like successor, but stylistically, he is closer to Casemiro than you might think. He has all the hallmarks of an anchoring midfielder, comfortable in the build-up, press-resistant in tight spaces, and disciplined in his use of the ball. Out of possession too, his willingness to defend on the front foot is evident in his tackling frequency, which ranked the 6th highest among Premier League midfielders last season. Where he stands apart though is in his discipline, as across 279 appearances in the competition he has remarkably never been sent off despite picking up 28 yellow cards. Much like Casemiro, who turned 34 in February and increasingly relied on his reading of the game than on raw athleticism, Tielemans defends with intelligence. He chose his moments carefully, often inviting pressure before stepping forward decisively to regain possession. Not every midfielder can truly balance defensive discipline with attacking thrust, but Tielemans is one of the few who can. He was the catalyst behind many of Villa's attacks, fizzing passes through the lines, driving his team up the pitch, a burden that has too often rested solely on Bruno Fernandes at United. That will change with the arrival of Tielemans, who also ranked first among midfielders for passes that broke 2 lines and was second only to City's Rodri for line-breaking passes made under pressure. Clearly he is not a midfielder who settles for safe sideways passes. Carrick's arrival has seen United emphasise playing more centrally than under Amorim. His team is operating closer together in the middle of the pitch to combine with speed, and favouring half-space play more often than Amorim, who relied more on his team shifting the ball out to the wing-backs to progress the attack. Having linked up superbly with Morgan Rogers, playing 40 line-breaking passes to him in the league last season, 14 more than any other teammate, Tielemans gives United supporters every reason to be excited about the prospect of a similar partnership forming down the centre alongside Bruno. He thrives on firing passes through central spaces, and being able to do so with either foot will create a lot more angles to prise open, stubborn defences. If Bruno can receive a pass on the half-turn and drive at the opposition, those vertical passes would immediately tilt the pitch in United's favour, particularly with runners like Cunha and Mbeumo darting beyond him and pinning the back line. Even higher up the pitch, Tielemans remains a central conduit. At Villa, he frequently anticipated Ollie Watkins' runs, clipping perfectly weighted passes into his stride. On that evidence, Šeško will be creaming his pants at the thought of the crosses and through balls about to come his way. Playing fast, intricate football is a delicate balancing act, one that demands players who are technically sharp and composed under pressure, not cursed with the first touch of a donkey. It's also the style most United supporters crave, and crucially, Carrick has pushed the team noticeably closer to achieving that. Whether or not United still need to sign a third midfielder is a question for another day. But what do you think? Is this midfield strong enough to power a Premier League title challenge? Or will the absence of an elite defensive midfielder become the weakness that derails their entire season? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more content like this. Also, don't forget to hit the notifications bell so you never miss a beat. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.